When it comes to extracting price, we jokingly refer to this as the money dance. If you think back to maybe when you were elementary school, middle school, or if you saw it on TV, you remember you hang up first? No, you hang up first. No, you hang up first. Well, when it comes to money, you tell me the price first. No, you tell me the price first, right? So there's this game that's going on. Now, before we actually begin negotiating price, what we want to do is we want to secure the perimeter. I look at this as sealing all the escape hatches. We want to deal with all the objections right here, right now, before we talk about price, right? And so what we want to do first, we want to summarize. We just finished paying. So as I understand it, you're very frustrated in dealing with the bank, anxious with the HOA, or overall are just tired and want to get this over with. Did I get that right? And then validating it. And we asked the question, did I get that right? Because we read from another book that if we can hear the prospect say that's right, we're moving in the right direction. So did I get that right? And I say, yes, that's right. Okay, well, I got to ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being if nothing changes, no big deal, and 10, we got to take care of this right away. Where are you? And you're going to hear oftentimes a 9 or a 10. If you don't hear a 9 or a 10, pump the brakes, slow down, figure out what you missed. Oftentimes you'll hear a 9 or a 10, and you'll say, you know, everybody says that. And what we found is one of 3 things that can actually stop us from working together. Timing, the price we offer, or maybe other people. In your situation, which of those 3 is most likely to stop us from working together? And the reason why we ask this now is we want all the objections before we get to the very end, when we're getting the contract signed. Remember, in our process, we're going for the close in the first 5 to 15 minutes, and then we'll disqualify all along the way. So up until now, we've disqualified off of pain and motivation. Now we're going to talk about price, time frame, and other people, and we're going to see which of those reasons why we should not do business together. And if we can get through all that, then we get everything signed. When it comes to finding price, there's a few questions we like to ask to pull it out of the homeowner. One of the ones we start off with is, well, history tells me the night before or the morning of, the husband and wife generally have a conversation about how much they feel comfortable walking away with on the sale of their home. Would you mind sharing with me what you discussed? And you might hear at this point, I'm not going to share that with you. I get that. Well, what else did you guys discuss? Have them talk some more. And then we follow up with, well, off the record, would you mind sharing with me in round numbers? So what are we doing here? History tells me, there's that third-party reference, right? We are the professionals. Would you mind sharing with me because, you know, mom said it's okay to share. And we can say off the record with a slight drop in our voice, well, off the record. Or you can say kind of jokingly, well, off the record, right? But either way, they'll tell you. It's crazy how effective that is. And then share with me in round numbers. Again, mom said it's okay to share, but round numbers, people will hold on to their numbers. If you say, you know, how much did you make last year? But if you ask a friend, well, can you share with me round numbers? They'll tell you exactly how much they made last year. So we say share round numbers and they'll feel comfortable sharing with us. Now, let's say you asked those 2 sets of lines and nothing happened. Okay, well now it's time to throw our competitors under the bus. So we're gonna say, you know, before we came over, I saw that people that are paying cash are offering between $80,000 and $90,000. Now I'm not saying that's my offer, but let's pretend someone offered you that. What do you see yourself doing then? Now, that number I said is completely arbitrary, right? It's either $20,000 below what we're comfortable paying, or it's what the tax records show. And so when we ask them, what do you see yourself doing then? You'll get 1 of 2 responses. First one is, that's an insulting offer, or that's such a low offer, to which we'll understand, yeah, we thought so too. What were you hoping to hear? And now, because we've shared a number, because that's the game, whoever says the number first loses, now that we've shared a number, that's not our number, they will now feel comfortable giving us their number, right? Or they might say, yeah, that's, if someone offered us that, we'll take it. Great, we're done here in the price step, right? So they say, well, you know, we were hoping to hear 120. And if that's more than your number, less than your number, we'll talk about how to approach it then. No matter what they say, we will respond with, well, if I could pay you that, what would happen next? And if they say, well, then we'll sign a contract with you, great. Now we know we've dealt with all possible objections. However, if they tell us we still have a couple other appointments, or we're still meeting with a realtor, or we're still waiting a couple of months, Now is not the time to start negotiating. We've got other objections we've got to deal with, okay? So now let's just pretend that they said they would sign a contract with you. Now we just tell them, well, we have a slight problem. They'll ask you, what's the problem? We can't pay that price. Should we talk about that, right? Now we've isolated the objection. Now let's say you tried all these lines and they still won't share with you their price. The next thing we'll say is, I saw that Toyota Camry you had in the garage. And I was curious, when you bought that car, did you test drive every Camry in town or only the ones that had prices on it? So only the ones that had prices on it. So you can kind of see the predicament we're at. We can only buy houses that have a price tag associated with it. Or what you can do is, we have this from one of our star students, Gino, says, don't tell me you're looking at those other offers for 110, 115. They'll correct you, right? Which is one of our techniques. And once they correct you, now you know where you stand. And the last thing we'll talk about here is you want to make sure that you're negotiating from what's owed on the mortgage, not what Zillow says the property is worth. Because if you're negotiating from market value, you're already behind the 8 ball. You want to negotiate for how much they owe and how much they're going to need to walk away. And from there, we'll figure out if our maximum allowable offer is greater or less than what they need. If our maximum allowable offer is lower than what they need, we got to negotiate. If our maximum allowable offer is higher than the mortgage plus everything they'll need to walk away from the house, now we're in business. One of the greatest travesties I see in our business is when you got a homeowner willing to accept a certain price and you're willing to pay that certain price and you don't get everything signed in writing. For me, that's a disaster, right? So we want to overcome this really in that we never share our number until they're ready to sign. And so when we're talking about the evolution of the relationship with the homeowner, I look at this as 3 different phases. The first one is stranger danger. Who are you? Why should I talk to you? And if you're cold calling, this is the first 5, 15, maybe 30 minutes of the conversation. On an inbound lead, this is the first 30 seconds to 2 minutes of a conversation, right? Once you get past this point, now everything's friendly. Everything's cordial. We're professional. We're actually having a communication, which is good until they hear your number. And once they've heard your number, you've now become commoditized, or I look at it as you've been friend zoned. Don't let this happen to you. And I want you to think back to potentially the last time you bought a car. I remember when I bought a car, I went to the first dealership, Showcase Honda, where I bought my first car. I told them, here's how much I want to pay. Where are you at? And they gave me a number. Then I went to the second dealership. What's your number? Then I went to the third dealership. What's your number? And I had them all compete against each other. What were we doing here? We literally commoditized all the dealerships against each other. Don't allow this to happen to you, which is exactly what happens once you share your number. Once a homeowner feels comfortable knowing your number, you are now a commodity. And you might have experienced this more than a handful of times where you talk to a homeowner, you give them a price, it was nice, it was friendly, man, that's a good number, let me think about it, I'll call you back, and you've never heard from them again. So again, for emphasis, your number cannot be shared until they tell you that they are ready to sign. In our office, the rule is you're not allowed to share your offer until you hear 1 of 3 things. I'm ready to sign, right? We ask what will happen next. Is I'll sign the contract. Great, we're done there. Or they're physically holding a pen in their hand in front of you. Or if you're on the phone, they're literally holding the mouse in front of them, right? So until you hear the words, I'm ready to sign, they're holding a pen or they're holding a mouse, they cannot hear our number. But what if there are other parties involved? Have you dealt in a situation where you got a probate where it's one person dealing with 3 other siblings, or you got a husband and a wife and the wife genuinely cannot be there and he has to take that offer to them? Well, we can play this higher authority game. So there was this really bad joke a long time ago, right? You're at the car dealership and the guy says, I need to go to my manager. And you say, well, you know what, you got to go talk to your manager. Let's do this. I'm going to put my wife on the outside of this office. And while you go negotiate with your manager, I will negotiate with my wife. 2 can play at this game. Now, that was a bad joke for many years. And now it's actually part of our regular business practice. So someone says, I need to talk to so-and-so. I'll say, well, I'm still not quite 100% on this number. So how about this? You go talk to whoever you need to talk to. I'm gonna go back to my office, talk to finance, talk to underwriting, and we'll figure out whether we can pay that number. So when do you think you'll have this conversation with whoever? Great. I'll call you back then, and at that point, we'll figure out whether we can pay it or not. So when you jump back on the phone, hey, did you talk to so-and-so? How do they feel about that number? And they say, well, they need more. It's like, oh, man, right? Now you're negotiating again. But they say, yes, we'll take that number. Now you can acknowledge that you can pay your number. And it sounds kind of weird, right? But if they go talk to whoever else and they have with 100% confidence to go back with your number, they will shop your offer. But if they go back without 100% confidence in your number, now they're going to fight to see if they can get so-and-so to accept your number. And now you've got leverage. And that's how we deal with higher authority. One of the questions I get a lot is, how do I get someone to come down $50,000? So for example, the house is worth $300,000. Seller says, Steve, I want you to make money. I'm reasonable. I'll sell you this $300,000 house for $270,000. You've heard this? But we got to be at $220,000 for our number to work. Now, I would argue that we were not good enough to get someone to drop $50,000 apples to apples. But the good news is we're not often negotiating apples to apples. We're often negotiating apples to oranges. So someone says, Steve, I need $270,000. We'll come back with, boy, it sounds like you're trying to get every last dollar out of your home and you want the convenience of a cash offer. How am I supposed to do that? And that's an accusation audit, right? And we're verbalizing out loud what they want so that they can realize how silly it is what they're asking for. And then we'll follow that up with awkward silence. We're just gonna pause and let them think about what it is that they're asking us for. Now, it's not $270,000 versus $220,000. Again, apples to apples. It's $270,000 and them dealing with a contractor, them dealing with a realtor, getting an inspection, an appraisal, financing, or $220,000 with us, and they don't have to lift a finger, and it's done, and it's closing fast, right? It's not apples to apples, it's apples to oranges. And so with this approach, it's really important that we're talking to the homeowner with a consultative approach versus an adversarial approach. I want you to look at this visually, right? You're both at the dinner table, and you, on the consultative approach, are sitting right next to the homeowner. You guys are sitting on the same side of the table. What does adversarial look like? Well, your house needs a new roof, new paint, new carpet, all these reasons why your house is terrible, and subconsciously, we're calling the kid ugly. Have you ever talked to a mom who would describe their kid as fat, slow, whatever, and she's kind of having fun, and you laugh along, right? You didn't agree too hard. But if you went to a mom and said, boy, your kid's kind of fat or your kid's kind of slow, you're going to lose all sorts of rapport or more with that mother. When you're insulting the house, you are subconsciously calling their kid ugly. Don't do that. Additionally, you might say, well, I need to make money on this house. Does the homeowner care the slightest bit about whether you make money on this house? Usually not. So then what's the consultative approach? Boy, it seems like you got the options. You got time, money, resources on your side. Yeah, you know what? You should go ahead and get that 270. If you need to do whatever as far as the work goes, I'm sure you've got a contractor in place. You got an interior designer that you love working with, and a realtor that you probably love working with. And you should go ahead and list it and go get your 270. You absolutely deserve it. And now when they tell you that that's not an option, now they're going to argue against themselves about the convenience, right? So we're not telling them they need to do those things. We're saying, boy, it's great that you got time, right? We're assuming best case. You got the time, you got the money, the resources, the connections. You go ahead and do that, and now you'll get the money that you absolutely deserve. And you can see here, this is consultative. And we'll share with them, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, we're never plan A. As a matter of fact, we're rarely plan B. We're an insurance policy. If you got options, go with that. If those options don't work for you, then that's what we're here for. In some ways, this is kind of like a maze. Did you ever go to McDonald's when you were a kid? Back then, they had this placemat with this maze. And what happened was you would go draw the line to this way, and that doesn't work. And draw your line this way, that doesn't work. And you draw your line a third way, that doesn't work. And then at the end, you found the exit. Well, the first spot that didn't work, well, you should hire an interior designer. Oh, that's not an option. Okay, well, maybe you should hire a contractor. Oh, that's not an option. Well, maybe you should go with a realtor. That's not an option. Well, then you end up with us, right? And we're Grimace. We're the cash buyer. But we want them to come to that conclusion, not us forcing that conclusion upon them. One thing we're all running into are multiple offer situations. You talk to the homeowner in the first couple of minutes, oh, by the way, we have 4 other offers. Or, hey, you should know, we're meeting with 5 other investors. And when you're running into this, it's hard because they're trying to get you to shop against yourself, right? And we don't do that. That's not the practice that we're in. So someone says, we got multiple offers. First thing we'll say is, boy, it sounds like getting the highest offer is the most important to you. And they're going to look at you, obviously, we're no idiots, say, hey, you know what, that's fair. You're trying to get the highest offer, you absolutely should. And all the time that I've bought houses, I've never been the highest offer. Knowing that, should I leave? What are we doing here? We're doing the takeaway. And they're going to say, oh, well, you're already here. Why don't you give us an offer? It's like, you know, it's not going to make sense. Our offer is just not going to be the best. And I say, okay. As a matter of fact, we surveyed the homeowners that we worked with in the past, and we asked them, even though we weren't the highest offer, why did you decide to go with us? You know what they said? And it doesn't matter what the homeowner tells you at this point, that's exactly what they said. You see here, who has the answers to their questions? They do, not us. Then we're going to isolate those multiple offers into one offer. You know, I got to imagine, if I didn't show up today, out of those 4 offers, there's got to be one offer that you really like the most. They say, well, you know, this is one offer. Perfect. I'm sure that's a great offer. And it's like, really? Yeah. I mean, it's the best offer. And they say, yeah, it's the best offer. Okay, well, you should probably go with that one. And they'll think, okay. Now, before you sign that, when you ask that investor about how much non-refundable earnest money they're going to put down, how much did they put? I didn't ask them that question. Oh, okay, well, that's all right. When you ask them about their proof of funds, how much did they put down? I didn't ask them that either. Oh. Now, what have we done? We isolated 4 offers into one. And now that we got that one, we can stomp all over that offer and we can actually begin the sales process without them even realizing we've started the sales process. According to Chris Voss, we never want to split the difference. However, if you split the difference the right way, it'll actually work to your advantage. Have you ever had a negotiation where you agreed to split the difference, but then after the negotiations were over, you realize, I gave up way more than half? What happened? Well, possibly this happened, inadvertently. Someone said we should split the difference. He said yes, and then you guys split the difference again. So how do we do this? What we want to do when we're splitting the difference the right way is we want to imply that we want to split the difference. You know, we're only $10,000 apart. It'd be a shame for this not to work out. If there's only a way where we can kind of make this work. And they'll say, well, what if we split the difference? Oh, okay. Well, what does that sound like? And they'll say, well, I'm at 100,000, you're at 90,000. What if we split the difference? I'm at 95,000. And we'll say, 95,000. So you're okay with 95,000. I was at 90. Well, I mean, what if we did 93,000? And now we split the difference twice, and they won't know exactly what happened here. Another thing we see all the time is, for whatever reason in our industry, everyone always offers to pay all closing costs. And I think that's great. I'm not opposed to paying all closing costs. The thing I suggest is maybe that should be our first throwaway. If your marketing piece says we pay all closing costs, then obviously you need to pay all closing costs. But if you're talking to somebody and you're negotiating, I think paying all closing costs should just be your very first throwaway, something that you can give away very quickly and they'll feel good about it, right? They will feel like they won, even though it's something that you're totally fine giving away. After we give away all closing costs, then we'll talk about the last mile. Man, what if we paid for a moving truck? What if we paid for a storage situation? Or what if you can stay another month rent-free? And what we're doing is, by offering these last random throw-ins, it shows that we have no more cash to offer, right? We are literally at the end of what we can offer. And make sure you end your offer with an odd number. So, you know, let's say we offered $93,713. Those odd numbers in their mind, they're going to think, oh, wow, we literally got every last dollar out of them. Even better, if you can work out the math in front of them so they can see that this is the last dollar that you have to pay. Another common mistake we see all the time when it comes to price is, this is the phase where we pull the number out of them. And that's absolutely critical. After we pull that number out of them, we got to get them to negotiate against themselves to a number that you're willing to pay. If they haven't shared with you a number that they're willing to accept that's less than a number you're willing to pay, you cannot leave the price step. You got to stay here. If you have to leave the negotiations, then you got to leave the negotiations. But you cannot leave the price step and continue to decision makers and time frame until they've told you that they're willing to accept a number that you're willing to pay.